RBLR Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Mills coming at you for the RBLR Sports podcast. I am here tonight to cover the Rowdies. That's what I usually do. You already know that. And I am here tonight with my usual co-host, Carlos. You already knew that too. But what you didn't know is how we're doing. So I'm going to start very briefly before we get into the actual soccer that we're going to talk about related to the Rowdies with my usual question. Carlos, how are you?
I'm good, James. I'm good. I've actually spent the last 3 minutes while we were waiting to start the podcast trying to figure out exactly what time the Rowdies kicked off back on September 27th, 2017 against the Bethlehem Steel.
A project that everyone has been dying to hear about.
Because you reminded me that next week we have a matchup against a Birmingham Legion. And it's a 12 p.m. kickoff on a Wednesday. We won't talk about that game on this podcast. We'll talk about it next week. But it just got the juices flowing in my head as to when the last time we had a midweek afternoon kickoff would have been. And I told you I'm recalling a 7th period afternoon back in high school. I think it was my sophomore year. And I was watching the Rowdies on my iPad against the Bethlehem Steel at that really wacky stadium they had. And I knew that game happened. I knew it was in the afternoon, but I've been obsessing about that for the last 5 minutes trying to figure out exactly what time that game kicked off. Anyway, we'll talk about that afternoon game later on next week. For the sake of this podcast, we'll talk about a Rowdies result this past weekend that didn't go too well. We'll talk about a game that's happening on Saturday as well, back at Al Lang Stadium, not at midday. Saturday, 7:30 p.m. as per usual. I'm excited that the Rowdies are back at home and there's soccer for folks to go see. I'm not as excited about the smaller number of folks that we've been seeing at Al Lang over the last home games. Maybe it's due to the results I'll talk about in a little bit. But James, I'm hanging in there. Football had a great weekend in Tampa. I'll tell you that much. Soccer, not so much. But football had a great weekend, and I was ecstatic about the USF win against Florida. I was happy that the Bucs won their opening game against the Falcons. So overall, I would say a decent sports weekend, and I'm doing well because of that. But James, how are you doing? What's going on over there?
Yeah, I am doing okay. I am today has been a great day for me. It has been World Cup qualifiers since 9 a.m. until we continue, in fact. And later on, it won't be a World Cup qualifier, but somehow we have to see exactly how low the U.S. men's national team will sink in their doldrums. So I guess that will be my self-imposed punishment for later on.
Yeah.
But we're gonna hope for the best and probably expect the worst at the same time. To get past all of that, because international soccer is not what we're here to talk about as much as I would love to, because I love the World Cup. I love the qualification tournament. I love seeing Norway with 11 goals in one game. Absolutely ridiculous results there. But as I said, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the Rowdies. So let's get into this. Last weekend, the Rowdies lost to Sacramento 2-0. Very unfortunate. It was Neill Collins' homecoming, and he actually, of course, got the better of us on this one. It was like what Carlos usually points out, an old Rowdies player scoring against us. I guess it was just the next level up from that. This week, we will preview another home game coming up against the Colorado Springs Switchbacks. So stay tuned for that. Obviously, we will give you the rundown not only on the Switchbacks, but what hopefully the Rowdies will need to do to get past them. That's the goal, naturally. Like and subscribe to us on YouTube or any major podcast platform. Wherever you listen, we are there. And of course, please follow us on your social medias. Whatever you use, we are also there at RBLR Sports. And you can keep track of the Rowdies if you'd like. And you can also keep track of the other teams that Carlos has already mentioned. The Bucs are one of them. The Bulls, yep. There is an RBLR Bulls show active right now. So just awesome. Tune in for that if you'd like. There's a pretty good time actually to go over specifically stuff related to the USF Bulls. So let's get back to the Rowdies though, and we'll start with our quick recap here of the 2-0 loss versus Sacramento Republic.
Yeah, James, let me get you into the starting lineup in this one. Still no Bill Hamid in the starting lineup. It was Ethan Bondre in net. I guess he just came to hang out and enjoy the Tampa weather. I guess you get similar weather down in Miami. Curious to see if we continue to see Ethan Bondre in net or if we at some point get the Bill Hamid experience, but we are yet to see him on the field. It was an interesting lineup, super confusing when I saw it just initially on my phone, but you'll see it take shape as we talk about it in just a minute. Castellanos was back line with Bancaziel and Guillen. Asokar continued being like the right wing back. I didn't know he could be. I didn't know that was in his bag, but that's what he is. Juan Carlos Asokar playing a right wing back with Wyke, Paul Marie, Hilton in the middle, and Blake Bodley out at the left wing back spot. Up top, you had Charlie Sharp and Rubens Pacias. A really, really interesting lineup here. Paul Marie obviously joining us recently, finding himself in the starting 11. And of course, just Juan Carlos Asokar has been a really interesting development for me in his role in that right wing back spot. We can talk about his role, his performance, and we'll get into that later on. We gave up a goal in the first half in this one. It was unfortunate. It came off of a good run of possession for Sacramento. They had the ball for maybe a good 2 minutes consistently, putting the Rowdies under pressure, forcing our back line deep into the box, throwing in some crosses. And unfortunately, it would be in the 29th minute. Roro Lopez, we got the opening goal off of an incredibly unfortunate deflection from Aaron Guillen. Took a really, really bad bounce, looped over Bondre and snuck into the top corner. It was a tough way to give up a goal, but it was certainly earned by Sacramento at that point, having had, like I said, a great run of possession, forcing the Rowdies deep into their own end. It felt like that was coming for the last few minutes there. Just an unfortunate way to actually give up that goal. And it wouldn't be until the 91st minute into stoppage time that the Rowdies would give up the second goal of this one, and it would be the last one we would see as the Rowdies lose 2-0, and Neill Collins is returned to Al Lang Stadium as a coach. We've seen him around. I've seen him around a few games as a fan, as a neutral while he was in between coaching roles, but this is his first time back as a coach of another team. And I will say he celebrated too hard for my liking on the second goal. That was a sad one to see. But you know what? Whatever. Game's a game. They're in second place over there, and they're fighting for those points just as hard as we are. Good for them. 2-0 win for Neill Collins and former Rowdies Freddie Kleeman and Ryan Spalding. James, we'll break this down a lot more in a minute. There's a lot to talk about, I think, in this one. We'll get into the themes and everything. It felt very much like a tale of two halves, like we say a lot. It's a cliche, but you'll see what I mean in a little bit. But let me just quickly give you the standings update. We are still not in last place, which is nice because we've been seeing that a lot this year. Miami FC is still in last place with 20 points in 23 games played. Your Tampa Bay Rowdies are in 11th, second to last place with 21 points off of 22 games played. Way up top, Louisville and Charleston Battery are still running away with this thing. Louisville has 54 points from 23 games. Charleston, 50 points from 23 games. Loudoun, 13 points back in third place. 37 points on 23 games. North Carolina, 33 points in 22 games. We got Loudoun coming up. I am selfishly pretty excited for that game just because I get to see the Rowdies in my neck of the woods right now. So it'll be in a few weeks. It'll be a tough matchup. Loudoun's still playing great soccer. But there's a huge gap, in my opinion, between, obviously in points, but in how these teams look. Louisville, Charleston, rest of the Eastern Conference playoffs teams. Despite everything that's happened, James, we're going to talk about this as we talk about the game against Colorado Springs coming up. It feels weird to say it. The Rowdies are still in the mix, right? After a disappointing loss this weekend, but they are. They need to string together a couple wins here on the back end. We have 8 games left to play. It's going to be really, really tough, but you're going to need to string together a couple wins, and the Rowdies are only 5 points out of playoff contention. Indy 11 sits in 8th place on 26 points. If you go out west, Neill Collins' Sacramento Republic is trying to catch up with FC Tulsa. FC Tulsa has 43 points on 23 games played. Sacramento, 6 points behind with 37 points. El Paso, 32 points in third place. Lexington, 31 points. I still think that's a really, really interesting story. Lexington they found their rhythm. And I want to give the Rowdies some credit for, I guess, like launching Lexington's season into flow, because after the Rowdies went over there and got that weird 1-1 draw with them, it seems like they just locked in and have had a great season since then. If you'll remember, when we played to that 1-1 draw, they were in last place in the Western Conference.
Mm-hmm.
They're all the way up in fourth place now. Crazy. Shows you can't take these seasons and throw them away, even when it seems, all that bleak, right? Lexington turned things around. There's a few teams that have turned things around this year. We can talk about that, when we're reflecting later on at the end of the season. But that's one of the more interesting stories, I think, on the back end of the season. I'll note that this is something I didn't notice until they mentioned it on the broadcast this weekend. The Western Conference is crazy right now. Oakland Roots has 24 points, and they're in last place, right? The fifth place team has 30 points. So that's 6 points between the last place team and the fifth place team, 7 points between the last place team and the fourth place team. There's 8 points separating third place El Paso Locomotive from last place Oakland Roots. It's going to be a grinder of a back end of the season in the Western Conference. Every game is going to mean a lot for these teams as they try to close the gap on the bottom end, and of course, as they try to pull away on the top end. So keep an eye on the Western Conference, James. I think it's going to be really interesting soccer, particularly over there as we come to a close this year. Maybe the Rowdies can get some things going for them, but if you're just looking for good USL, fun matches to watch when the Rowdies aren't playing, check out the Western Conference. I think those late night games are going to be pretty fun to watch. Okay. That's my USL ramble. That's the update. That's where teams are on the table. It's going to be interesting. But let's talk about the Tampa Bay Rowdies, James. That's what we do. RBLR Rowdies show, right? I don't know where to start. Maybe we start with the lineup. I think the lineup was really interesting. Like I said, Encaziel, Guillen, Cascianos on the back. Lasso was on the bench, by the way. We know he'd been out with injury for a while, or I expected him to be out longer. They mentioned a broken clavicle on the broadcast, and we hadn't heard anything about from the team about him. It didn't happen in a game or anything. It just said it casually on the broadcast, I think last week or a couple of weeks ago. But he was on the bench.
Yeah, that was how we learned about it.
Yeah, but he was on the bench in this one, so make of that what you will. I don't know if that means he's actually healthy and able to play if needed. Obviously, they didn't want to throw him in here, but he was available on the bench, right? Paul Marie on the right wing back spot. Sorry, Paul Marie was playing in that central attacking kind of role that he took up for a little bit last week as well. Super interesting. Sokar, again, super interesting. He's playing right wing back. Charlie Sharp getting the start, James. That one was interesting for me as well. Again, I get at this point in the season, we're trying to figure things out. We're trying to just, I guess, still experiment. But we've talked about consistency and needing just a semblance of, the same guys out there to continue to build rhythm. A few of these starts are confusing to me. Is that fair? Is that a fair word? I don't know if I'm not to be critical of it or anything. It's just interesting. It's confusing. Charlie Sharp starting is interesting. I haven't really seen him do all that much this year. But I guess we're throwing him into the starting lineup in an important game, right? Juan Carlos Sokar at that right wing back spot he was actually okay. Defensively, I think he got exposed again a few times.
Yeah.
But again, he's an attacking guy. He provides something in the attack. So something to note there. There was just a lot of interesting choices made, I think, in the lineup and the substitutions. What do you make of it? Are you as curious about this as I am? I wish I was there to talk to Coach Casciato, because I think there was a lot to talk about here.
Yeah, so this is actually something that we did bring up with Coach Casciato after the game. By we, I mean Eureka and myself. Producer Eureka and myself, we went to the post-game press conference, and we were just, I think, asking general questions about what the next steps are to try and get the Rowdies into the playoffs. The other thing that I wanted to highlight, and I specifically want to bring up John Morrissey at USL Tactics for this quote. He was the one who provided it, and I used it in the post-game press conference to try and get a feel of all of this stuff. But basically, if you want to go and read his Substack, I would highly suggest that you do that. There's not just a bit about the Rowdies in there, a couple of other interesting tidbits, but there is a larger piece about the Rowdies, and that's specifically what I wanted to bring to him, because there are good, like I said, very good figures related to, I think, what Carlos has already mentioned this, but it's a trend that we've all at some point, whether it was on this podcast or you were talking to a friend or whatever the case may be, I'm sure most people listening or watching this will have said something along these lines. The Rowdies recently have looked bad in the first half, frequently not starting well, giving up a goal in the first 3 minutes versus Pittsburgh, for instance. And then in the second half, we'll make some substitutions. Things look a little bit better, and maybe we come back and win like we also did in that game against Pittsburgh. We did not, obviously, against Sacramento, but the piece focused on where the Rowdies are deficient in this issue, where we look a certain way in the first half and we look a certain way in the second half. So to go back to John Morrissey's piece and quote directly, since July 11th, the Rowdies have taken the least touches in the box, 12.4, in the USL on a per game basis. For every entry into the final third, this team plays just 1.7 passes into that zone, fifth from bottom in the championship, and evidential of that wastefulness. So while I don't want to just quote from John Morrissey the whole time here, because that would not be good podcasting, and also you can just go read his full piece if you would like to do that. I did bring that up with Dominic Casciato and Captain Aaron Guillen after the game, and they said that, you know, they are continuing to work on everything in training, and they are continuing to try and improve their play patterns and get better. If I'm being as honest as possible here, I didn't find the answers to be the most satisfactory. I found them to be a little bit, especially when, you know, we have these figures and they can say that they're working on them in training. I appreciate that they are working on them in training, and I guess I would like to know what that looks like. You know, I would like to know a little bit more specifically what they're trying to do. I'm no expert or anything here. I literally just turned to somebody else's quote, both in the press conference and now to read it out here. But yeah, I wanted to try and get something a little more specific. So unfortunately, we don't have that to report. The post-game press conference did not provide that much illumination. When it comes to the substitutions and the starting players ahead of them, obviously, I also asked about that. And, you know, I asked basically, is this the manager trying to find his best formation? I use the word tinkering. That's the best phrase. That's the most common phrase that people use in this situation. They're tinkering with the lineup, trying to find the best players to put in every position if this is the lineup that you want to stick with and the formation that you think is best suited for this roster. So he said that they are just trying to put the best players in positions. And again, you know, I don't want to be harsh or anything here, but I didn't find the answer to be the most specific. So it ultimately wasn't particularly satisfactory for us. And that's as may be. They've got to keep some cards close to the chest in hopes that they can turn things around in future games, I'm sure. Not that we generally have a ton of reporting coming out after these press conferences, because it's just not the quotes do not, again, they're not very specific. So it's not, I don't know how many other teams are going to listen or read what we write and then, oh, now I know what to do against the Rowdies. But that's neither here nor there. My takeaway is, yeah, I do think it's a little weird for Wana Sokar to play as the right wing back personally. I think that he was involved in probably, well, you could say one of our best attacking moments in the game, and it was right off the kickoff. So maybe there was a bit of delay in just being perfectly ready from the Sacramento Republic players. I'm not sure. So it's probably not indicative of our overall play, the patterns of play that we were creating on a regular basis. Charlie Sharp up top, I suppose that makes sense in that he's a striker, but I haven't seen, maybe this sounds harsh as well, I haven't seen a ton from Charlie Sharp so far. I think the closest that he's come was literally in the 6-yard box, and unfortunately, he put that one wide. So I just haven't seen a great deal from him at this moment. And that doesn't mean that he's not a good player. That doesn't mean that he's not contributing. I'm just wondering about, I guess I'm wondering about where we are getting the points that are hopefully going to win us games, that are going to get us up the table. That's what we're all looking for, especially at this crucial time of season.
Yeah.
It is September, folks. This is including the Colorado Springs Switchbacks game. We have 8 left until the playoffs start. So we have that long to make it into a playoff position, or not, obviously.
Yeah.
The last thing that I wanted to highlight, and I'll turn it back over to you, Carlos, because I've been droning on for a while. I hope not. But the last thing that I wanted to highlight was the center of the midfield. We talked about Asokar and we talked about Sharp. On the other side was Blake Bodley, and the defense was, you already went through that, but it was Guillen, Van Kaziel, and Castellanos. So the center of the midfield was Lewis Hilton, Paul Marie, and Lawrence Wyke. And depending on which part of the game, maybe they were in different positions. But for my money, that seems to be an extremely defensive central midfield. I think Juan Asokar is going to be, and he is a more attacking player, so this makes sense. He's going to be charged in this scenario with carrying the ball forward, getting involved in the attack. That's going to be one of his biggest duties on the night, and maybe defensive duties are going to be left to other players. As you said, Carlos, maybe that also led to him being exposed a couple of times. I don't think that's unfair. Blake Bodley is going to be another one. He's going to be tasked with getting forward a lot more in this group because the midfield, again, seems to be pretty defensive. Lawrence Wyke, I saw him do this a couple of times. He's not incapable of it. He would take the ball forward a couple yards, try and possibly beat 1 or 2 players even at times. Maybe not the most successful, but that's something that appeared to be part of his list of duties for this one. And Paul Marie was probably the one who was also tasked with getting higher, I should say, to involve himself in helping out the attacking players. But again, if you have Paul Marie, whose natural position is not a right wing back, but fully a right back, stepping into the central midfield, Lawrence Wyke, who in his versatility has played as a defensive midfielder, one of our right wing backs, or as an out and out defender. And then Lewis Hilton, everybody knows Lewis Hilton is a more defensive midfielder, and his attacking play actually has 2 goals on the season, but his attacking play usually is him trying to find players in higher positions up the field. I just don't think that that's not a very attacking unit overall. And ultimately, I don't know where Bodley and Asokar and Woobs and Sharp up top are supposed to get the help that they need to make this a functioning team that kind of gets past those stats that I cited earlier from John Morrissey. Where are we supposed to get these passes into the final third? Where are we supposed to get these touches in the box? If that's kind of the lineup that we have to create anything in an attacking sense. That was my question going in. I don't know that it was necessarily answered, and I don't know that it was answered in the post game, like I've already said. But that was my. I guess those were my 3 biggies with the starting lineup.
Yeah.
We did see a little bit better with the substitutions, but by then we had already given up a goal. We did not really improve in terms of our attacking play afterwards, at least not enough to get a goal, obviously. And then Sacramento just rode their luck, rode their chances, and eventually they got what they needed, which was, I guess, a moment when all of the Rowdies backline fell asleep.
Yeah.
But it was in stoppage time. We were already down 1-0. So what are you going to do then?
Yeah. I'm curious at what point, maybe if we're, trying things out, at what point we give Skinner just a go at it and start at right back. Obviously, like, Moon is not available. He has some sort of injury, right? That's why he's not on the bench. That's why you have Asokar at right wing back. And Skinner every time Skinner comes in, he brings some sort of energy. Maybe that's a tactic, right? Maybe, you let him be the energy, the spark plug, right, off the bench, like almost like a Damian Rivera, right, last season. Was that last season? Yeah, he was here last season. Started to blend together. But like he's been solid. He came in, slotted in at that right wing back spot for a Sokart in the 56th minute, even though he's naturally a lefty. He comes in and helps create a pretty good look. I wish he would have. This was threw down in my notes here. Yeah, Wyke. By the way, you mentioned Wyke, who's naturally a defensive guy. I think Wyke had a pretty good game actually in this one. He was moving the ball pretty well considering like his natural defensive inclination. He likes to get up the field and put in a beautiful ball to Skinner in the 70th minute. Nice through ball while Skinner was at that right wing back spot. I wish Skinner would have just ripped it with his left foot. He was coming in from the right, made it into the box, had a chance to just kind of curl it in, far post maybe. But he tips it over to Whoops, and by the time Whoops gets his foot to it, he gets closed down by a Sacramento defender who clears it. Anyway, all that being said, I think if we're just rotating people in and out, seeing who works best, throw Skinner in there for a start. Why not? But I'm curious maybe why Paul Marie, right? Why he wouldn't naturally be the right wing back starter, right? Instead of a Sokart. I don't know. Maybe if you throw Paul Marie in at right wing back, it allows you to bring in Luis Alvarez as a starter, right? Luis Alvarez, who's naturally an attacking midfielder. If you're looking for attack, you're looking for goals. I'm not saying he's produced everything we wanted out of him this year. But so has neither has most of the team, right? I'm brainstorming, thinking out loud. It seems like that would have produced some more attacking kind of result. All that being said, second half we had some 70% possession, right? I'm not sure if that's like a result of a halftime approach or halftime adjustment to our approach, halftime adjustment from Casciato being like, okay, let's step up the ante. Let's move up the fields, but apply a bit more pressure. Let's, move up our lines. But to me, it seemed like that possession in the second half came out of more Sacramento just being really comfortable with their 1-0 lead.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You could tell they stepped off the gas a lot. They were not uncomfortable by the fact that the Rowdies had 70% possession. And we had a good run of it too. Like even, within that possession, there was a good 5 minutes in between the 50th and 55th minute, let's say, of good possession. Like we started out pretty good after we settled in the second half. A lot of good crosses, some balls being played through that are just out of the reach of our strikers. Sokart had a half shot, half cross in the 53rd minute that Danny Vitiello almost bobbled. Sokart actually had another great look in the 47th minute when we're starting to apply some more pressure. Ball bounced out to him, and he rips a half volley. That's a really, really nice shot. And Vitiello is forced to make another save. Rowdies actually finished this game with, I think, 4 shots on target was what I saw. Sacramento had 2, and they scored 2 goals. They just didn't feel a need to be all that much of an attacking threat. They just, knocked in that first goal and were comfortable to lay off the gas after that. At a 1-0 lead, I don't think I've seen many teams be that comfortable. They looked calm, cool, and collected. They were fresh. You'll notice that Cicerone, who actually got the goal in the 91st minute, he's been in the entire game at that point. He looked like he just subbed on. Also, he's naturally a quick guy. He has great fitness, as we've seen him play in the past in USL. But the way they were playing just allowed them to be calm, cool, collected, conserve energy. And on the back end, he just blew by the entire Rowdies midfield. Van Kaziel, who was gassed and had been exhausted for at least the last 10 minutes of that game. There's no chance for Van Kaziel to catch up to Cicerone off of on that counterattack that Sacramento had. And I think it was, who was it? It was Juan Herrera who put in the, light cross, put it square. Cicerone, easiest finish of his life. I bring that up because I think that's a result of Sacramento's play style in this one. They were just, like I said, comfortable. They didn't need to apply too much pressure. It seems like their guys were fresh from the first minute to the 90th minute. And that's a result of us not being able to find a way to effectively get through their back line, who played really well, by the way. Kleeman is having a fantastic season for Sacramento.
Yeah, it should be.
Which is crazy. Honestly, when he was here, I didn't think he was like all that. He wasn't actually that good. Whenever he would come on, like I remember there'd be several episodes we talk about how Kleeman had become a liability in several games, right? Like he had moments where he was becoming like the guy we wanted to keep on the bench if possible for the Rowdies. But he's having a great season in Sacramento. He locked down a good Woobs chance. He locked down a good Sokar chance that I have noted here. Like he was playing really well. So they were just, like I said, comfortable from the back line to the top. They were defending with all 11 guys at the beginning of the second half. They were playing on the counterattack most of that second half, and should have had 2 more goals. Cicerone missed a really, really, really wide open opportunity. He was one-on-one with Bondre and tried to chip him, and the ball went literally like inches wide of the goal in the 74th minute. 75th minute, literally right after that, Sacramento gets another counterattack, and it's deflected by the Rowdies back line. The one I want to mention is in the 77th minute. This one was actually incredible. Sacramento, it was Herrera that gets wide open. We saw this a lot in the second half on the back end. And again, I think it was because we were exhausted. We were applying some pressure. We had a lot of possession, and our back line looked pretty gassed. They were slipping in behind our back line multiple times on the back end of this game. That's how they scored their goal in the 90th minute. That's how they got that chance in the 77th minute, 75th minute, 74th minute. In the 77th minute, Herrera gets a ball looped in, threw in behind the back line of the Rowdies. He is wide open, should easily have another goal here for Sacramento. It should be a 1-on-1 between him and Bondre. But a shout out to Robert Castellanos for that recovery, by the way. It counts as a goal. Like, that was incredible. It was one of the best tackles I've seen, like, from the Rowdies, from a Rowdies player, period. It was incredible. The recovery was incredible. The close down speed was incredible. At this point in the game, when the Rowdies back line had looked exhausted already, the effort, the energy, and the speed, I just honestly didn't even know he had to close down on Herrera was really, really, really impressive. More of that would be great. It was just incredible. Perfectly timed, poked it away. Herrera was looking for a penalty because he was shocked. There was no way someone could have caught up with him in his mind. But that was really impressive. So shout out to Castellanos for that really, really impressive tackle in the 77th minute to save the Rowdies from going down 2-0 at that point. It'd be in vain, right? But just a really, really impressive tackle. A shout out to the back line in this one, James, because I don't think the back line was all that like bad in this one. They were actually solid, all things considered. The few chances Sacramento did have, good chances, they were able to mostly shut down. On the back end, it was just they were exhausted, right? That's the reason why that came in the 91st minute.
And it should also be pointed out, obviously, the goal was pretty lucky. I think that we've already hit on that. But the goal itself, really not something you expect to go in.
The first goal, right? Yeah, against that took that deflection.
Exactly.
Despite it coming in that really good run of possession for Sacramento, where they had possession, they were putting in good looks, they were throwing in a good cross. Bondre was forced to make the save. Like, the Rowdies were defending that pretty well. They were defending that well. They were defending with all 11 guys. I think the midfield got maybe like just a little sleepy on that one. White maybe drifted out too far, a bit wide. And Roro had a lot of space to actually take that shot for Sacramento. But I think Guillen did everything right there on that, goal. Guillen recognized that immediately, closed down instantly. Because of that close down speed, it took that weird deflection, right? It took that weird deflection off his leg and unfortunately bounced by Bondre. So demoralizing for a team, by the way, at this point, who is fighting for any playoff hopes. To see another one of those unlucky goals. We've had a lot. It feels like we've had a lot of those this year. weird deflections, insane shots from half field, or like I can't get that Rhode Island game out of my mind, right? Just random goals like that have happened that deflate this team, or that can be deflating. We've seen them bounce back. Actually, we've seen them bounce back a lot in recent months. That's how they've gotten most of their results, is coming from behind. But that was highly deflating. So all that being said, I think the back line had a great game. I think if there's something that Casciato has started to figure out this season, it's defensively how we minimize those goals from coming in. We were conceding a lot of goals on the early half and in the first half of the season, and obviously we're in last place because of that. Well, second to last place. But I think that's something that started to work out. The attack, which we've talked about at this point, is still just a little directionless, maybe, which is unfortunate because that's what we know Casciato for, right? Like that's what he was branded as. He's like this attacking coach with scores a lot of goals, very forward thinking, still relatively new. So you can't expect that philosophy to be implemented in, just a month, 2 months. Right. But I don't see some of these guys on the field necessarily being conducive to the, 3-goal performances that Casciato was having in Union Omaha, for example, right? I'm not really being sold on the attack right now, which I think is going to be the biggest thing holding us back from potentially, right, hopefully making a run of 2 or 3 wins in a row here on the back end of the year, to get us into the playoffs. But I think if there's anything that's going to hold us back the most, it's the attack, I think, at this point. I think defensively, we're getting really unlucky. I think we should have more shutouts than we do at this point in the year, just because we've had some solid defensive performances that have unfortunate goals. So that bad luck, can't just continue forever. It'll have to slow down. My guess is we get a couple shutouts over the next few games. Defensively, we continue to lock down, but I imagine there's going to be like a 0-0 draw in there that just doesn't really help us. So yeah, I would say if we're looking ahead a little bit, I think that's the area that I'm most concerned about over these last 8 games. I think it's the area that most failed us in this game. It was just a little confusing, and you make a good point. Like it felt like a defensive midfield, right? In some sense that they were, we were maybe going out there to play a little bit more defensively against this really, really good Sacramento team. But yeah, it's unfortunate. That's my biggest area of concern at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we're mostly hitting on the same things here, and it just goes back to, it goes back to those same facts and figures from apparently July 11th onward. So, or at least that's obviously when John Morrissey related the stats to now. So, I tend to agree with your take there. Defensively, we didn't look that bad, even though Robert Castellanos and Thomas Van Kayziel have kind of been played in a couple of different positions. They have probably been among the more consistent starters for this team, alongside Aaron Guillen, who I think has started the vast majority of games over the course of the season. The midfield has been the most chopping and changing, other than the attacking unit. You should probably point that out. But yeah. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if they can land on a lineup, so to speak. Maybe landing on a lineup is not the way that Casciato views this right now. But we don't have that information at the moment. We're probably just going to have to see what the patterns turn into as the season goes by, and hopefully we'll get some more data in the Colorado Springs Switchbacks game, and then maybe afterwards we can get some questions in about that too. So. Carlos, is there anything else specific to this Sacramento game that we want to highlight?
I'll just mention the lineup movement happening later on in this one. The 84th minute, Luis Alvarez came in for Bodley, who I think he went down, but I think it was exhaustion. He'd been running a lot. I don't think it was an injury. I will say, the benefit of having so many utility players is that you can bring in Luis Alvarez for Blake Bodley and have it make sense. Like, Luis Alvarez comes in. Joey Skinner, who's at right wing back, shifts over to his natural left wing back spot. Paul Marie drops down to the right wing back spot where Joey Skinner just was. And then Luis Alvarez takes Paul Marie's spot on the field in that attacking midfield kind of role, which to me makes more sense naturally, right? Like those are their natural positions. I'm not saying it's going to lead to goals or anything because it hasn't really all that much this year. But if we're looking for consistent attack, it would just make sense to me to put guys in where they're, naturally most comfortable playing. And we haven't seen a lot of Luis Alvarez just in general. Like he's been coming in on the back end of games, which I think is really unfortunate because I did have like really high expectations for what he could do for this team this year. I thought it could be a really transformational signing. Transformative signing, that's a better word for it. Transformative signing when we actually made that happen earlier this season. To me, it was indicative that we're not really giving up on the year, right? We hired Dom Casciato. It also felt a little bit like that, but in my mind, there was also something that, okay, we're building for next year. But then we also, you look at the Luis Alvarez signing, you look at going out and getting a Paul Marie, signing a Charlie Sharp, right? Like there's a lot of movement that's happened for the Rowdies this year. And unfortunately, I don't think, Paul Marie's very recent, but it hasn't really come to fruition in anything meaningful yet, I think I'm with all the new acquisitions mid-season, the one I'm I think most disappointed by right now is Luis Alvarez because I just had such high expectations for what that signing could do for this season, right? I'm curious as to why he's coming in so late. Maybe it's just a fit with Casciato's, game plan. But to me, it would seem that with his philosophy of being super attacking minded, super on the ball, forward thinking, Luis Alvarez would be a player for that kind of philosophy, in my mind. We'll see what we look like on Saturday. We've seen a lot of changes and rotation happening every week, so who knows what we have in store for the Colorado Springs game, which we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, I think all things considered, despite what I just said, I think I would like to see more Luis Alvarez earlier in the game, maybe a start, right? Like we need naturally attacking guys in the game if we want goals to happen. So, yeah, whatever. That was the last thing I wanted to mention, just because I think it's really interesting how we've been able to rotate guys and guys switch entire sides of the field, right? When the sub comes in, that's been an interesting thing to watch for the Rowdies this year. All the utility guys and how they fit in with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's see what happens Saturday. James, is it time for our man of the match?
Yeah, think so.
Cool. I'll go first. I'll give mine. I'll just throw in Robert Castellanos as my man of the match. I thought, like I said, the back line had a great game. I'm throwing him in here in particular because of that incredible tackle on the back end of this game. It was beautiful. It was so well timed. It was center back poetry. It was awesome. It was really, really fun to watch the replay on that one. For me, like I said, counts as a goal on that end. He had a solid game all around, but I think that just puts him a bit, that puts him over that man of the match line for me, over the other guys on the back line, saving that opportunity. So good for Castellanos. He's had some good performances. I think he settled in nosely at this point in the year. He's become like the big center back there without Forrest Lasso. He's had to become the main guy over there. So good for him. I think he settled into it nicely and he had a great game. But so did the rest of the back line. Van Kaziel, I think, had a great game despite running out of gas at the end. He did a lot of running this one. It's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
I think he had a really, really good game center back or in that center back spot as well. And I think Guillen did as well, despite, the goal going off of him in that weird deflection in the first goal. So shout out to the whole back line, but in particular, Rob Castellanos.
My man of the match is Juan Asokar. I specifically wanted to pick him out for this one because, like I said, I think that he was involved in the best attacking play of the night, which for us was a shot from outside the box. Unfortunate, but that's the way that it goes sometimes. And I think that he did well in his task tonight. The problem, as we've noted, is that he's not as suited for the defensive side, probably. And even if he's played there for other teams, I don't think that it's the best thing for him. But on the attacking side, when he was allowed to do that, he did everything that he could.
Yeah.
I think that he also, we talked about Thomas Van Kaziel. I think that a lot of people ran their hearts out in this one, and it was a very hot night for anybody who was there. It was your typical August or obviously early September humidity. So I think that Ahsoka good enough for man of the match based on what we have here. That's where we are.
To throw this in here as well, and I think it's a good shot for man of the match, but like, not that this is a knock on him in this game, but it was a really comedic moment as I rewatched it today in the 40th minute when we had like a free kick from like near half field. Drew Felios there, he's in the box talking about Sokar, and he's going to wait for him to put in a good cross here into the box, right? All the guys from the Rowdies back line are up there in the box waiting for a ball to be looped into the box from near half field. Juan Carlos Ahsoka says, screw that, and decides to just rip a shot, which, like, good on you for having the confidence to take a shot from there. Unfortunately, the shot went about like I don't know. I think he said they joked on the broadcast that it would have been a field goal that's good from like 65 yards away.
Right.
Flying. It was funny to listen to like the silence after that shot on the broadcast. They were just kind of confused. But the Bucks had a struggling moment at kicker in Atlanta. So if Ahsoka needs to transition careers and he's thinking about taking Chase McLaughlin's job on the Bucks as kicker, let's put him in touch, because it was a leg on that kick. So despite that, I think a good shot for man of the match. I think he had a good performance. Okay, James, let's talk about Colorado Springs. Should we do that?
Yeah.
We don't talk about them much. We don't play them very often. In fact, now with the new format, once a year. It's an interesting team. I can't say I've watched a lot of Colorado Springs this year, but there's a few things to note, and we'll talk about it in just a second, right after I throw in a shameless plug, James, for the RBLR Rowdies shop, the RBLR Sports shop, not RBLR Rowdies. If you like this podcast, you like listening to James and I, you like listening to the rest of the RBLR crew talk about the Tampa Bay sports teams, you can support us just a bit more by heading over to shop.rblrsports.com and checking out all the cool designs that have been cooked up over there. You can get your gear for upcoming Rowdies game this weekend, Buck season in full swing, Lightning season coming up soon, Rays coming to a close, Sun, Bulls. There's a bunch of gear over there that have been cooked up. Fun RBLR Sports designs. You can use promo code COYR for 10% off your purchase. So there's no reason not to go ahead and check out everything over there. And maybe purchase a little RBLR Sports gear. Like I said, you can use promo code COYR for 10% off that order. James, a lot of cool stuff over there. Check it out. Link in the description of this podcast. There's cool stuff happening on the RBLR shop. Okay, let's talk Colorado Springs, James. Rowdies at Al Lang, one of the many home games to close out the year this season, against Colorado Springs, 7:30 p.m. It might be a hot take. I don't know if people agree with this. I really like the Colorado Springs Switchbacks logo. I think it's cool. I think it's fun. They play in a cool stadium in Colorado. Actually, it's on my bucket list of places I really want to go to for a Rowdies away day, maybe next year. Doesn't matter this season because they're playing at Al Lang Stadium, and you should be there if you're listening to this podcast. There was a crowd of some 3,800 people this past weekend for the Sacramento game. That's not good. Like, we got to avoid that. So bring your friends, bring your family, keep going to the games. It's the back end of the year. I know it's not the best performances we've seen from the Tampa Bay Rowdies squad, but you'll regret not going to these games once we hit the off season, and it feels even longer because you hadn't been to a game in a few months. Go check it out. James, what can we expect from this Colorado Springs Switchbacks team? Do you know anything about them? Do you have some notes to throw in here? I can't say I know a ton or seen a lot, but there's something I want to talk about later.
I do have some notes at the very least, so we'll get into that. And I will point out while we're on the subject, I do like the Colorado Springs Switchbacks badge, and I generally like all of their colors and yeah, well, the badge is the main thing. But my complaint about Colorado Springs switchbacks is it is too many goddamn syllables. It is too long. It needs to
Colorado Springs switchbacks. Yeah.
If it's going to be Colorado Springs, which is already as many syllables as that is Colorado Springs, 5, let's not add another 2. It should be Colorado Springs blank, or honestly, and I hate to see more just blank city FC. It's so boring across the US now. Like you guys have got to be a little bit more. I'm not even one of the people who's like, man, I love the Portland Timbers or whatever. Like I don't necessarily like the Americanisms, but it can't be Colorado Springs FC, but it also shouldn't be Colorado Springs switchbacks. It should just be something shorter. Anyway, that's maybe Springs, something with just Springs. I've gone on too long about this, obviously. Let's go talk about the switchbacks. This weekend at Al Lang, the Rowdies will host them again at 7:30 p.m. Get your tickets. Let's actually fill this stadium. Carlos has already noted the prior attendances not good enough. Let's get it higher. Let's raise it up. They are 5th in the West with 30 points. They are actually among several teams with 30 points. We highlighted that earlier as well. They need a good win probably to stay in a good playoff spot. So they're going to be keeping up with that. Just keep that in mind as we go through this. They play with 4 at the back and will change their formation up top to suit whom they're playing. So let's go through who they probably will have. In net, most likely is Christian Herrera. He will be behind probably Akeem Ward, Matt Mahoney, Garvin Methuselah, and Matt Real. Garvin Methuselah did not play this past weekend. That's because he was on international duty with Haiti. He should be back and obviously should be able to go again. Next, midfield could be in a 2-3-1 or a 3-3 situation. Steven Echeverria, a Puerto Rican international, will most likely be the defensive midfielder behind something like Quincy Hurman on the right, Marco Micheletto in the center, and Jonas Fjällberg on the left. Juan Tejada has been a regular player in the attacking unit, frequently as a striker. However, there could be another player playing in the actual striker position, Kyle Vassell, who recently joined, I believe, from somewhere in England, if I'm not mistaken, or it might have been another USL championship team. Either way, he is a recent addition. Yeah. So that is what we need to focus on. Marco Micheletto is the player with the highest goals on the team over, I believe, all competitions. And if I'm not mistaken, Juan Tejada is actually doing pretty well. But the other players who are up there are Quincy Hurman and Jonas Fjällberg. And so it's going to be the wide guys that are going to be kind of important here, the wide players in the more attacking part of the midfield specifically. This is going to be a tough game. Marco Micheletto, we're going to need to shut him down. The good news is if we have 3 defensive midfielders in the middle, maybe we'll be able to do that. Yeah. And maybe our wingbacks will have a little bit more space because they play with fullbacks, and so they're going to be a little bit deeper themselves as a defensive line. I don't know exactly how that's all going to play out specifically. Colorado Springs might change things up just slightly, dropping Echeverria deeper so that the fullbacks can become wingbacks, meet up with our own players on the outside in the outside areas. And it's just we're going to have to wait and see how it plays out, of course. But Micheletto and the wingers around him are going to be the players who are going to create the most chances. They're going to also whip the ball back into the box from out wide, and they're going to try to score that way. Or obviously, depending on who is the one doing it, they will be looking to get the assist. And Juan Tejada, Kyle Vassell, Marco Micheletto are all going to be one of the late runners into the box usually. But again, maybe we can clog that because we're going to have so many players there if we have a similar lineup to the one we did against Sacramento. They're in pretty good form recently. I think they've only lost twice in their last 8 games. Keep that in mind. This is going to be a tough one, but we only have 8 games left ourselves. 5 of those are at home. Really, we should be looking. It's going to be difficult, but we should be looking to get 15 points out of those games. That would be ideal. Is it going to happen? Almost certainly not at this point, but imagine where we would be with 15 extra points, right? Just think about it. Yeah, that's my take on the preview for this team. Carlos, what do you have for the Colorado Springs Switchbacks?
I just recently found out we've only played them 3 times. It feels like it's been a bit more. But I was going to throw in the fact we played them 3 times, twice away, once at home. In each game, the home team has won. So not Sacramento, Colorado Springs has the slight edge in the Rowdies Colorado Springs head-to-head matchup. They've won 2 games. We've won 1. First game was back in 22. It was 1-0 win in Colorado Springs for them. Last time we played them at home, though, James, it was a 2-1 win for the Tampa Bay Rowdies back in May of 2023. Own goal from Herrera from Colorado Springs and a goal from J.J. Williams. Last season we played them in Colorado Springs was off to a horrific start. Goals from Leo Fernandez and Damien Rivera saved us from what would have been a more embarrassing 4-0 loss. This one turned out just to be a 4-2 loss. Doesn't look as bad on the score sheet. So make of that what you will for your prediction, James. I'm giving you some historical context that may or may not play into this. But if the limited pattern of 3 games and the home team winning each of those games between us continues, maybe we can say it's a favorable bit of recent history for the Rowdies. That being said, Juan Tejada is still on the squad. Makes me sad to see him on another team still. It feels like just yesterday that he was running around and still doing his trial for the Rowdies, and everybody fell in love with this guy that was just giving 150% effort in those preseason games. I'm glad he's doing well, though. I'm glad he settled in with the club over there. I had one more thing I wanted to mention about Colorado Springs.
Aiden Rocha?
Is he still there?
I believe so.
Aiden Rocha? Well, if he is, shout out to Aiden Rocha, Georgetown legend, one of my friends from I didn't know him too well. I'll claim that I was friends with him, though, because he's a pro soccer player. Yeah, that's cool. I think you're right. Yeah. He's still over there. This guy you mentioned, the new striker for Colorado Springs, Kyle Vastel, just from a brief look at his career, interesting career. He's 31 years old. He's Northern Irish. He comes to Colorado Springs from Kilmarnock. James, you're Scottish. How do we say that? Kilmarnock? Killy, right? That's the team that I think Neill Collins was a fan of.
Yes.
Back in Scotland. He had 3 goals over there last season for them. But he's had a lot of, English football league experience. Cheltenham, Fleetwood Town, Rotherham, Blackpool, Shrewsbury. Like, he's been around the English football pyramid, let's say. And is landing back in the USL after 1 season in USL with San Diego Loyal back in 2022. So he knows the league. He certainly can score in the USL. He had 14 goals for San Diego in the 2022 season. So he's the threat. He's played in 3 games for Colorado Springs and already scored a goal. So I think he might be a threat still for this squad. Might have knocked Juan Tejada out of a starting role, but maybe Juan Tejada shifts into that kind of like attacking mid role, kind of false 9 area maybe that he used to run with the Rowdies. We'll keep an eye on it. But yeah, good to have Juan Tejada back in Outland Stadium. Love the guy. Hope we can get out of here with a win. I'm not too sure though. James, predictions?
Yeah, let's get into it. I'm waffling over here, so we might as well just go ahead.
This game has a 0-0 draw written all over it for me. I think that's what I'm going to go with. I want to say a win because of the recent history I mentioned, right? Like, 3 games isn't a lot to go off of. I do think it's a challenge for some of these teams, especially from out in, the mountains, Colorado Springs, West Coast, very temperate, very nice weather over there. I don't know what the weather's like this weekend. I wish we would have played a team like this over the summer when it's just like blistering and it's humid and it's like hard to breathe over there. That's when like our home field advantage really kicks in, right? I over here in Arlington, Virginia, James, it's really nice. I don't know what it's like down in the Tampa Bay area this week, but I'm hoping it's
very
really
rainy.
Very rainy. Hey, I mean, that could help too. I do think some of these teams from out west in particular struggle when they play against the Rowdies at home, and they're not used to these conditions where it's super humid, super rainy. On Saturday, it looks like it'll be a high of 86 in Tampa. So honestly, like, my prediction is also hinging on there being some solid humidity to tire out the Colorado Springs guys when they're down there, because they're in really good form. They started off the season rocky. They were on the bottom portion of the table at the beginning, early third of the season, but they've really turned things around recently in the last few months. And like you said, only have 2 losses in the last 8 games. So I want to be optimistic as possible and predict a win. I'm thinking it'll be a rather slow draw. Yeah. I'm going to give our defense some high expectations for this one. Because like I said, they've been playing well. Why not get another shutout here? I think they've deserved it. And I'm hoping we can take advantage of some sort of mistake, some sort of exhaustion from Colorado Springs on the back end and maybe get out of there with a 1-0 win. I think it'll be a 0-0 draw.
Okay. Well, Eureka, our producer, has joined you on the draw side of the ledger, 1-1 to be specific. I am waffling between a loss or a win here. I think that it will be 2-1. Based on the recent record, I'm going to go with a loss. I'm going to say a 2-1 loss. But I guess that's where I am. Yeah. All right. Well, that will do it for our preview. Carlos, I actually didn't have anything for extra time. The only thing that I'll say is if you guys aren't watching the World Cup qualifiers, it's been so good. It's been so good. Some of them are available to watch on a replay, depending on what services you personally, whoever this is listening or watching, have. But we're recording right now on Tuesday. If you are listening to this, the U.S. men's national team play a friendly against Japan. Probably going to lose that because we've been really bad recently. Or you could possibly also watch, again, depending on what access you have, you could watch South American qualifiers. And more than likely, this will be Messi's last ever World Cup qualifier.
Thank God.
Almost certainly. Carlos is among the people who are happy about that. He's also among the people who are probably very happy that his country is about to qualify for the World Cup. Have they?
Ecuador?
Yes.
Ecuador's been in since the last international break.
Okay, yeah.
Comfortable.
So they're all set. But Venezuela are hanging on for dear life. I have a lot of Venezuelan friends, so I'm hopeful that they can get a result. And Bolivia, who have already qualified for a World Cup, can just sit this one out. I'm sorry. There are a lot more Venezuelans in America than there are Bolivians anyway. So let's just give them a shot here. Other than that, Carlos, anything else to throw in for extra time?
No, I think those games will be interesting to watch because, Brazil is comfortably into the World Cup qualifier. So you mentioned Brazil, Bolivia, and Venezuela. It's because, for anybody who's not aware, Venezuela, like you said, hanging on to that last spot would be the playoff spot.
Yes.
7th place on 18 points, and Bolivia has 17 points. They both play at the same time. Bolivia plays against Brazil, which you might think would make it impossible for Bolivia to qualify at that point. But they play in the highest stadium altitude-wise, I believe in the world, the highest FIFA.
I'm pretty sure it's across the whole world.
It's certainly in the Americas. Certainly, there's not a higher stadium in Europe. I would imagine there's some, rather high altitude football pitches in Asia somewhere. I don't know if they're FIFA sanctioned or that there's a club that plays there. Bolivia doesn't have a ton of talent, so they really, really lean into that altitude thing. And they used to play in La Paz at Bolivar Stadium. They've actually gone even higher this World Cup cycle. I don't know if you knew that, James. They went one stadium even higher. They went to the stadium in El Alto, Bolivia, which is literally, if you don't know Spanish, El Alto is literally the tall or the height, the tallest. It's kind of ironic.
What's funny also about that is that they've been so successful in playing there that I believe it's Peru, which is considering changing to a different stadium in the future that is also very high up in the mountains and obviously would force other teams to play against ridiculous altitude. Yeah.
Peru's thinking about playing their qualifiers in Cusco next cycle, which would be hilarious as well. It's the magic of South American qualifiers. But so that being said, Bolivia plays their matchup against Brazil at 7:30 p.m. at 13,615 feet in altitude. 13,000, James. At the same time, Venezuela plays against Colombia at home. Both Colombia and Brazil are already qualified. Bolivia would need to win against Brazil, which is still going to be tough, even though the altitude thing, right? It's going to be really interesting to watch. Colombia doesn't like losing to Venezuela, so I don't think they're going to roll over and let Venezuela get a result here.
Right.
I think you're more likely to see the Brazil team play like nowhere near their starters out of, wanting to avoid them. Injuries happen easier in altitude, right? Like there's no need to throw the Brazilian players in and play at full speed. I think you're more likely to see a Brazilian team roll over and be more inclined to drop a result to Bolivia than you are to see Colombia drop a result to Venezuela. So it'll be really interesting to watch. Again, we're live right now. If you're listening to this live, the kickoff's in an hour. There are ways you can watch it if you don't pay for the Fanatics subscription. But it'll be really fun to watch. Ecuador plays against Argentina in half an hour. Both teams already qualified. It's more of a formality. But it'll be fun to watch regardless to see Ecuador play Argentina in Guayaquil. Ecuador also plays a lot of their qualifiers in altitude in Quito at 10,000 feet. But they mix in a lot of matches in Guayaquil as well, which is at sea level. So, yeah, I won't say they don't take advantage of it as well when they're playing against some teams they need points. But I guess since they don't need the points anymore, they're switching it up and going to play in at sea level against Argentina. So, yeah, good stuff happening. World qualifiers are fun. Excited for the World Cup. The first round of applications to get your FIFA World Cup tickets, that I believe the application opens tomorrow. So if you're interested in going to the World Cup, keep an eye on that. For whatever reason, it's limited to Visa card holders. So keep an eye on that. Do your application tomorrow if you want to get World Cup tickets. We'll see what happens, James. We're coming up on it. It's around the corner.
Yep, absolutely. So with that, I think we are all set, folks. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate when you do. And I guess that we will have to see you after the Colorado Springs Switchbacks games. We'll be recording on Monday because of those 2 games coming up next week, including, as we noted, a midday game against Birmingham Legion.
Yep.
Truly, truly crazy in the USL Championship. Thank you for tuning in, as I said. Please follow. Oh, Carlos?
I think I figured it out. I think it was an 11 a.m. kickoff against Bethlehem Steel back in 2017. So this kickoff is technically an hour later. Not as bad.
Just keep that in mind, folks. We have done worse.
Was it 12:30? Eureka's correcting me. Eureka says 12:30. Damn. I've been looking. I've been really looking into it too. I don't know how I missed that. I don't know if you're in the area and you're unemployed, go to the game. Maybe you can skip class if you're at school and you go to UAB or something. Go check it out. It'll be fun, I guess. It'll be a weird one, but midday kickoff, James. Who knows? Let's get weird. Let's go get points. It's a weird time, but these points are still critical, right? So we'll talk about that game next week, and it'll be fun to talk about. But for now, let's focus on Colorado Springs and get out of there with a result. James, people can follow RBLR Sports on social media. That's true, right?
I believe so. In fact, you should be able to follow us on the likes of Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, anywhere at RBLR Sports. I'm mostly on Twitter at RBLR James K. Carlos, now are you available on any of these?
I also am on Twitter at CarlosTPA10. Let's get weird. Let's go get points this weekend. Let's go get a result at 12 p.m. in Birmingham. Who knows? Go to the game, I guess. Be part of the several hundred people that are there. James, people can follow you too as well.
Yeah, like Carlos said, I am mostly on Twitter at RBLR James K. Like and subscribe to our podcasts. You can get the full experience on YouTube. We're also on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts. Everywhere you are, we are too. We will see you on Monday, hopefully with a win in the bag and 3 more points on the table. Come on, you Rowdies.
Why not?
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.